Welcome to Calming the Chaos podcast, where we help you find peace in a chaotic world. I'm Tracy Canella, licensed mental health counselor, certified eating disorder specialist, and advanced clinical hypnotherapist. Calming the Chaos podcast provides you with self-help resources for handling anxiety, stress, and overwhelm. It is not a substitute for counseling or psychotherapy. So if you like what you hear, please subscribe and share it with your friends. Thanks for tuning in. And now, let the chaos begin. In this episode of Calming the Chaos, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Nhgi Dang. And Dr. Dang has been a family practice doctor for at least 10 years. And in his work with families, children, adults, he has noticed a lot of mental health issues coming up for all of them. And so what we're going to do today in this podcast is talk to Dr. Dang about his work, about what he is doing and noticing, and how he is helping parents and kids communicate about mental health issues through his books and his writing. And so let's now welcome Dr. Dang to Calming the Chaos podcast. Welcome, Dr. Dang.
Hi, thank you for having me. This is Dr. Nhgi Dang.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I like talking to you about what you've gone through personally, and you've talked about your concern about kids and mental health, and that is just really where my heart is too, because our children are our future, right? There's a song about that somewhere, and I think that you can help us communicate a little bit better with our kids through your books, and also just maybe some wise counsel. That's kind of what I'm hoping that will happen today. So welcome.
Perfect.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you were born in Vietnam, but you grew up in Southern California. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing, if you'd like to, and how you got started doing the work that you do.
Yeah, sure. Yes, I'm the youngest in my family. We are a family immigrated to the States when I was 6, turning 7. Um, big, moving from Vietnam to the States was a big transition for me. Not only language wise, but culturally, it's very, very different. Um, the earliest memory I can recall was my first day of, I believe, first or second grade. Um, didn't know a single word of English. Didn't know what's going on in class. All I remember to this day was one of the students. I don't know. He was throwing some tantrum. He went up on in front of the classroom, knocked down all the books on the floor, and then the teachers kind of just stood there and stared at him and just kind of told him to stop. Which what I was assuming she was telling him, because I didn't really understand what she was saying. But it was such a culture shock for me, because in Vietnam you respect your teachers. You would never do such a thing. That's like unheard of. So I was just shocked, like, oh my god, is she not gonna stop him?
Yeah.
So that was like the most vivid memory I had. And then so I remember walking up to the front and picking up the books for the teacher and then going sitting back down. But that was the biggest shocker for me to kind of witness that such a shift in the culture. And I was just like really shocked at how you know children are treated in two different countries.
Right, right. Well, gosh, so acting out, right? So the first exposure you got to our culture was kids act out.
Hmm.
And they do because they have big feelings about something, right? I think maybe you've probably known that by now. And then you do seem very well versed in English. I might want to ask you, did you just have to be baptized by fire and learn the language just by being around people? Or was there an ESL class that you were able to take to be able to help you communicate with teachers and friends and your classmates?
You know what? There were actually ESL classes, but I don't think that was where I really learned English. I think it's just, just like how you learn a foreign language, got just be thrown in there, just an immersion. That's how you pick up the language eventually.
Wow. Yeah, well, because you speak really great. So do you still speak your native language, I assume, right?
Yeah, I still speak it with my family. I actually have Vietnamese speaking patients that I use Vietnamese with, so I still use it quite a bit.
Mhm.
But in terms of learning English, same with my siblings and I. We just got thrown in, and you gotta just pick it up.
Wow. Okay. So that was your first exposure to our great United States. Welcome. And then, so what made you want to become a physician, a family practice doctor?
Actually, the rest of my siblings were all in medicine, and I'm the youngest. So I looked up to my siblings. So, I saw what they were doing, and decided to just follow suit.
Are you
Mhm.
inundated with work being a family practice doctor? I just know that the ones around here are completely full, and a lot of them aren't taking new clients.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a universal problem now. We're
Mhm.
short of doctors, and we have all these people needing care. So I think that's the same situation here. We get tons and tons of patients, and yeah, everyone just swamped.
Mhm. Well, that's another reason why I really appreciate your time today because I know it's valuable and I appreciate this conversation. When you started to notice the mental health issues coming up within your kid population, the children in your practice.
I think even when I was in med school, you already see it and during med school when you do your rotations, and then I saw it more when I was in residency, and then see even more as an attending. But during the pandemic, I think it's when the big spike in mental health visits increase. With adults and children,
Mhm.
um, which it's hard to kind of juggle both, taking care of mental health and switching gears and taking care of physical health. Sometimes it's hard to turn back and forth, kind of wearing multiple hats. Um, but the what actually motivated me to write this children's series was after getting a call from my mom late at night to let me know that I lost my nephew due to suicide.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember the call. My mom called me late at night. So I thought it was something wrong with her or my dad. So I'm like, "Are you guys okay? Are you guys in the hospital?" As a doctor, that's the first thing I think about.
Mhm.
Like, no, no, we're fine. But your nephew just committed. They found him in his room, and
Wow.
in my head, I was trying to process it. Even though I'm a doctor, it doesn't. When it's your own family, it hits a little bit different. So it took
Yeah.
me a moment to kind of realize what she was saying. Originally I was asking like, so is he in the hospital? Is it like attempted suicide? She's like, no, 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 he's gone.
Mm. It was a
Yes,
completed suicide.
yeah. So
Oh my gosh.
you know,
My sincere condolences for that. That is a really heavy duty thing to go through. And regardless if you were close to your nephew or not, a suicide in the family is one of the most traumatic events that I think a person can go through.
yeah. So the typical survivor's guilt. I started questioning like if I'd done anything different, if I reached out, if I did anything different, would it change the course? And then I thought about what I've gone through, all the the bullying and depression that I went through, growing up, transitioning and thinking about what he must have gone through, trying to just, figure out what he was thinking.
Mhm.
And that really motivated me to kind of do something to help educate the public, um, to make mental health, something more common that we are able to discuss, or even children to discuss among themselves. So that was the whole reasoning behind why I wrote the series. Because I mean, naturally, I'm not a writer by any means. So so this is definitely a step out of my comfort zone. This is not what I do normally.
Mm. Well, and you mentioned too, discrimination was something that you have faced, I believe probably because you're a different race than the common white culture that we have here, and constantly having to self-validate, right? And depression, you mentioned. So these are all of the things you struggled with. And then with your nephew's suicide, I'm not sure if your own children were born at that time, but I think your own children were also influential in helping you to write children's books.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Because then I see my kids; they're 2 and 4 currently. So then then it just hit me. I'm like, man, I don't want my just thinking what if that happened to my own kids, right?
Hmm.
So that's when it just hit home, and I was really motivated to do something.
Yeah.
That's why I wrote this series to help, spread the words, educate, hopefully, make it something that parents can talk to their kids about, and even hopefully kids can talk among each other about.
Yeah. So here's where I'm going to go ahead and try and share my screen with you. And we're going to go and take a little trip to your website if we can.
Sure.
Yeah, so pretty much these books that you have written were in the spirit of what we just did in the introduction. Dr. Dang became a physician because his older siblings had, and he followed suit. And then the suicide of the completed suicide of his nephew, and also his own children and his own experiences being in this different culture have really made him sensitive to mental health issues. And so what we're looking at here is the website of Adventures of Max and Friends, which is the series of books that you put out so that people can talk to their kids about mental health issues. So I think your first book here, it covers bullying. Am I correct about that?
That's correct.
Uh-huh. Let's tell us a little bit about Max and how you were able to develop the character. And by the way, um, the graphics of this, in just the fact that it's a picture book, it just warms my heart because I love picture books, and I don't think that you're ever too old for picture books. And I just love the title, First Day of School, and he's all by himself. I mean, it just really warms my heart just to see that graphic. How'd you come up with that stuff?
Actually, like I said, growing up, I was kind of by myself most of the time, trying to learn, trying to make friends. So I spent a lot of time drawing. So that was my go-to to get away from my escape, just draw and be in my own world. So growing up, I always enjoyed drawing, um, but I haven't picked up a pen or a marker or any art supplies since maybe high school until now.
Did you draw this?
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Well, that makes it so much more special for sure. Uh, so So tell us about Max. Max is a boy. He does seem to be a boy with ears. Is that kind of like mouse ears, or what was the impetus for putting the mouse ears on Max? He's just adorable, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. So I thought about making human characters, but I decided to make them all animals instead, just to avoid any exclusion of any ethnicity or any individuals. So I thought better to just become all animals, so um, people don't feel excluded if it's like a certain ethnicity or a certain sex, then they
Hmm.
they not relate to it. So I decided to do animals instead. But what I did was actually I used the 12 zodiac signs. as the characters. If you notice in the book, all their animals were part of the zodiac sign.
Mhm. This is fantastic. So the first book, as you can see here on the screen, is the first day of school, and apparently Max runs into a bully, and this is something that we need to talk about as kids and parents in the real world as well, because bullies are definitely out there. There's bullies on the internet, there's bullies in your school, and there's people who try to abuse their power if they have maybe a person that's smaller in stature and a person who's larger, or a person who has more money or power, or whatever it might be. So is there anything that you can say about bullying in school that you could tell parents and kids about? Just maybe some sort of a hope of an encouragement, or just something that you'd like to say about bullying and that topic in general.
Yeah, so at the end of the each book, they have a little snippet about more information about each topic. What it included there was some facts. Studies shown that at least 1 out of 5 children have been bullied in some sense. So it's relatively common. So I mean that's at least 20% of the population have had to do with bullying one time or another. So it's not something where it's so rare that only 1 out of 100 kids it happens to 1 out of 100 kids. So 1 out of 5 is pretty big, like pretty large statistics.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of studies shown that creating this atmosphere where it's like zero tolerance, you would think that would reduce bullying, but it actually doesn't really help bullying too much.
Yeah.
um, creating more like a respectful atmosphere at school or in the classroom, where we teach more respect. I think that would be, they said that's most helpful in terms of reducing bullying.
Mm.
And as for parents, I think sometimes um, parents don't know what to do when the kids get bullied. They just tell them, just ignore them, do this and that. But sometimes it helps, but I think the majority of the time it does not. For multiple reasons. So one of the reasons I've talked about with other people is that some kids just don't have that skill, and you're expecting them to have this ability that they were innately born with or are taught. So it's kind of hard for them to stand up to the bullies or do this and that when they weren't really equipped with the right skills. An analogy I like to use a lot of time would be like, for example, I don't train in any martial arts or any combat sports, and then you put me in a ring with someone that's been training for 20, 30 years and tell me good luck. I mean, we all know what's going to happen.
Right. It's kind of like when you got put into that class at 7 years old and you didn't know the language.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of unfair to ask some kids to do certain things that they weren't, taught, or they don't have the skill set to do so. So, for parents, I think the best thing to do is probably, get involved, talk to the teachers, talk to the principals, kind of come up with a game plan or how to attack it. I think that would probably be the best way to help your children.
Mhm.
As opposed to just kind of send them off and, hoping for the best.
Yeah. And I think from a mental health perspective too, when I work with kids who have been bullied, I try and you mentioned respect earlier. I try and help kids develop their own self-respect. And once they do that, they're able to stand in their own power, no matter how powerful they are physically or whatever, but they have this energetic power about them because they understand that they have resources, they understand that they've got certain talents and strengths and gifts, and they also understand that they're not going to put up with being treated disrespectfully, and they're going to ask for help if they need it. And those are the things that we do mental health wise with bullying. And I'm sure glad that you have written this book about this. Again, it just blows my mind that you did all the illustrations as well. That's just so cool.
Yeah, touching on that, bullying is not just physical. I think bullying, a lot of it is mental. Where the when you get bullied, you feel ashamed, you feel embarrassed, you feel like you're no good, you feel like it's your fault sometimes. So I think that's where the mental health comes in. I think a lot of it is, you know, I mean, getting punched or pushed or whatever, like it doesn't really affect kids, but the mental part of being bullied, I think that's what is the problem. Where you feel like you're there's something wrong with you. That's why you're being picked on. So I think that's the worrisome part about bullying. It's not just the physical.
Right, anxiety and shame come up, like fear, anxiety, and shame kind of come up as emotions when, and I guess depression could probably come up with bullying as well. Well, let's scroll down. Can you see this next one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is your second book here, and this is Making a New Friend. And yet, it's not about really making a new friend. It's about being in an IEP or having a learning disability, right? That's more the tone of the book. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about this book and what makes it so special.
Yeah. So the first book is the it's about Max, who is the essentially the protagonist of the series, and then the second book would be this book. Actually, shifts to the bully, which is who you're staring at, which is Terrence. So the second book shifts to his perspective, and you kind of see what he's going through, what he's experiencing, and why he was acting a certain way. I mean, not to give it all away, but essentially, he has a learning disability. He's struggling in school, and he's essentially kind of envious and jealous of the protagonist, Max. So that's why he always picks on him for that reason, because he's struggling, he's having a hard time, he doesn't know what to do, and he sees the someone else doing well, and he's just irritated at that fact, and so that's his motivation behind why he bullies Max. And then you later on you kind of see them interact, and how his mindset changes and his opinion of Max, and Max's opinion of him changes too.
So much of this mirrors the work that I do with kids because some kids just don't understand why they're being bullied. And then, so what we do is we say, well, what are the possibilities that are going on here? And yeah, one of the possibilities is that the bully is envious of what you have or jealous of what might be taken away from them, or they may be going through some imbalance of power their own selves, like they could be being abused at home, or they could have a disability, a learning disability, something that makes them feel disempowered, that will actually cause them to act out on another person they feel that they can be powerful over. And so this is so cool. So I didn't realize this second book was from the bully's perspective. That is so
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah. So with social media, I think children can't really understand empathy sometimes with everything going on in the world. So that's why I made it where the book actually shifts to a different perspective of each character. So you kind of see what each character is going through, what's going through their mind, what's their mindset, as opposed to their what the other characters' impressions of them are. See if it's totally accurate or not. Sometimes it's not accurate at all.
Right, right. Yeah, we can have different stories that we make up about what's going on with them, but we really don't know the truth until we actually ask them and they tell us the truth, right?
Yeah.
So, and then this third book, and now these are out and you can actually purchase these books. The third book says test day, and so I was thinking, oh, you're going to talk about test anxiety, but it's really more about a spelling bee. And I love this because when I was in middle school, I actually won the spelling bee for our middle school. And
Oh, no.
I went to the county championship and all that other stuff. And the word I lost was alligator. And I was thinking it shouldn't be two L's, it should just be one. because that would be alligator. But so I spelled it with one L, and that's the word that spelled me down, and had to sit down. But at least I made it to county
Yeah,
championships,
that's very
and so this one is about the spelling bee and the pressure that is on kids to excel in school, and there's some competition. Tell us a little bit more about what goes on in this book.
yeah. So the premise of the story was that the main character Max. He starts out his first day of school. Has been practicing all summer for the spelling bee. So his goal was to win the national spelling bee that year, and a lot of it was I think he wanted to do that more for his dad than for himself.
Mhm.
Which I mean, yeah, a lot of us can relate. You know, a lot of times we do things for our parents more than for ourselves. Um, so you know, he had a lot of pressure on himself to try to win because he wanted to make his dad proud. Um, and then, not to give it away, but essentially, what the takeaway message from this story is that you know success doesn't define who you are, but it's the failure that actually defines your success.
And it's
So
all a learning experience, right? It's all a lesson.
yeah, one of the information I added in the back was that actually there's you know studies have shown that what's the difference between a kid that's successful and a kid that is not successful. It's not um it's not so much about their IQ score. It's not so much about their natural talent. They found out that actually the key to a successful child is actually grit.
Mhm. Oh, just someone who's gonna just continue to push forward no matter what, right?
Yeah, so basically the grittiest child will be the most successful child. It's not the most talented, it's not the smartest kid, it's not the you know the coolest kid, it's the one that actually doesn't take failure and quit.
Yeah, and doesn't give up. Yeah, doesn't give up no matter what. I like the way that grit rhymes with quit too. Like, don't quit, have grit, something like
Yeah,
that. And in this book, you introduce a new character, Mira, and he didn't expect to struggle alongside of her. And that often happens when you have competition and you actually have a friend that you're competing against. So it seems like this book right here has just a lot of different themes that kids face, right?
yeah,
Competition, pressure, achievement, and friendship.
yeah.
Mhm. So, and I think in this 4th book is about Mira, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's basically a shift to her perspective. So this her Mira, she and Max are good friends. But she happens to be very smart as well. She does very well in school. And they actually so she actually beats him out and she goes to the national spelling bee. So then in this book, we shifted her perspective, and this is when you know the pressure actually gets to her too,
Mhm.
because this is a big competition for her. She hasn't been to this to the national level before, so then the pressure gets to her,
Mhm.
and you know she starts having anxiety. Then starts experiencing panic attacks, and you know basically it just kind of outlines what the symptoms and signs of panic attacks and anxiety, what's that feel like, what's that look like, and you know, what the possible treatments are. So this one really addresses anxiety in children and panic attacks, and you know what to look for, what signs to look for, what to do as their parents.
Yeah, and anxiety can manifest in so many different ways. I love that you are addressing this because, yeah, once you get on stage, you can get self-conscious, you can get anxious, and there's a lot of now mind body sort of psychotherapy that can be very helpful for even the youngest of kids just to be able to get back into your body, take a nice big deep breath, count to 8, let it out, talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend. Those are the kind of tips I give my kids that come in with anxiety and panic, and to also assure them there are preventative things that you can do, and then there are triage things that you can do when you don't expect a panic attack and it's starting to come, right? You're triggered,
Yeah.
and they can do both. They can do meditation or yoga or just a little
Yeah.
mindfulness activity every day to prevent, and then they can do a breathing technique when it comes up. And that also, a panic attack has never killed anybody, and you're
Yes.
going to be fine.
Yeah. So actually, it addresses what she goes through, and the CBT, the cognitive behavior therapy, is
Mhm.
a very good treatment for this condition.
Yeah, that's what I just described. So you address that in your book. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and now this is not going to be available, so it's going to be released on 10/28. So
Yeah.
it's
So
it's not available
next,
now.
yeah, next week.
Awesome. Yeah. But you have more, and actually going to be releasing books through the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
I can see this one is going to be right after Thanksgiving. And so we introduce a new character, Rosa. And it's interesting, it says new kid. Yes, there's a new kid, but really the new kid is a new because there's a divorce, and that is a really, really stressful thing for kids to go through. And I love that you are talking about divorce in this book, and also that picture is just so sweet, right? I mean, it just sort of makes me want to cry.
Yeah. So I mean, which one of us hasn't really been the new kid, right? We've been the new kid one time or another. So I wanna that's my way of adding a new character, where basically Rosa is she moves to school because her parents are newly separated, just trying to adjust, and um, she was very standoffish, just like most of us. Didn't know really how to make friends, but luckily, Mira, befriended her because she knew how it was to be the new kid as well. So basically, this book kind of follows Rosa to her journey. Kind of first not really accepting her parents' divorce separation, and then later getting really frustrated, and eventually going through all the stages of grief, um, and then getting therapy and getting help with her mom.
Mm.
So this book actually addresses more dealing with depression and being the new kid and what to do. And again, same thing, symptoms and signs of depression that parents can look out for, and the resources and what to do when you find these things.
Yeah, because kids really love stability and structure. They don't know it, but they do. But what you're addressing in this book is, if we're going through a separation, if mom and dad are separating and or divorcing, it is a loss, right? And it's a change, and it's a disruption of stability and structure, and we have to figure out a new way to do things, and it's often really difficult for kids to do so. Just again, really appreciate you addressing that, and then introducing Rosa here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mira. Now Mira is the one that was with the spelling bee. So you actually sort of dovetail onto these and hook them all together, it looks like.
Yeah, so basically, you follow a story. It's just actually going through the progression of the year.
Yeah. Yeah.
How, just a normal school year. Things happen throughout the school year, and same thing with this series.
Right, right. And I see that you introduced Tyler in this one. And this is another really big theme that comes up with when parents do not like the chosen friends. So if the kid has a friend and the father doesn't like him or the mother doesn't like him, and then the kid sneaks out, I mean, it just seems like there's a bunch of themes wrapped up into all of these books. And I really, really like where this is going here. I don't know if you have any more after this one, but what do you want to say about the Adventures of Max and Friends and Tyler.
Yeah, so again, this one kind of addresses, what happens when the parents have this certain perspective of your friends, and there's this miscommunication, and where to go from that. I think in this story, I try to highlight that sometimes your perceptions can be very inaccurate. So again, not to give the book away, but then what happens was that the dad actually gets saved by one of Tyler's friend's dad, and then because of that, he really changes his perspective and realized that what how his mindset was totally incorrect.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of times I think with parents, though, there's so much emotional connection to the kids that they don't open up their minds as much to the logical side of them, because there's just so much emotion going on, because this is my kid and I love my kid
Yeah.
and I care about my kid. And I think balancing emotion and reason is always a really good practice. That's a DBT, like you had mentioned, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's dialectical behavior therapy as well, that really helps you to balance acceptance and change, and also just to be able to be more open-minded, more mindful. And so that would be my contribution to this discussion, is maybe yeah, give some parents some DBT skills. And we've got a lot of them here. So, and I think you've got another one. This is the one that's, yeah. Oh, we got two more. Good Lord, look at all this. And again, these are all artwork that you've done, correct?
Yes.
So this is more about online stuff, which is a really big concern in this day and age, right? Digital friends, and spending more time with digital friends than real friends. And what do you want to highlight in this book, and what's sort of the message that you want to bring home?
Yeah. So this book is actually me just more addressing internet safety. So the so Tyler, he's kind of like the fifth man in their group, where Myra and Rosa are good friends, and Max and Terrence became good friends. Even he's in the group, but I think deep down he wants kind of a best friend to himself, and he thought he found that with someone online, went through a game that he was playing,
Mm.
but he later realized that that's not really true. It's not a child that he's playing with. So this book kind of highlight internet,
Oh,
and sometimes things are not what they seem online, and what things you can do to protect yourself from being uh, from these predators out there.
oh my gosh. And I think parents would really appreciate too some tips about that as well. I don't know if you offer that in the book, but I know that some parents will have parental controls and control over phones and devices, but kids will be kids and they'll figure out ways, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I think a lot of it's me kind of speaking to the kids, be careful and things that you look out for. A lot of times, just like I said, the predators kind of prey on kids that are looking for something, and so that's why in this book, kind of Tyler's kind of looking for a best friend. So that's where he fell into that trap.
Nice. Nice. Very, very good topic here. And then here is the it says last summer, and I think that's probably the end of the school year, right?
Yes.
And so this actually, and it's again, the title does not actually reflect what is in the text in
Yeah.
the book, but it really reflects on losing a loved one.
Hmm.
And I really believe that kids, we don't do a great job of, in our culture at least, educating kids about loss and about death, about illness, and comforting them and helping them feel their feelings through it. But what do you have to say about the context of this last summer book?
Yeah. I mean, this is actually a lot of stories is what I pull from my experience. I lost my grandma when I was 18. Um, Even at 18, it was really hard. I didn't know how to really cope with it. That was like a losing a family member that I was really close to.
Mhm.
And no one really even talked to me much about death and what happens afterwards growing up. So that's why I wrote this one, to where Max actually loses his grandma. So this story goes back to Max's perspective, and he visits his grandma during the summer, and he ends up losing his grandma. So basically, this book just shows you, the emotions that you go through with a loss, and how to cope with it, how to deal with it, and as a parent, what you should do with as well, just how to discuss death and losing a loved one with your kids in a way that's they can understand and digest, and not so roses and flowers type that they can't really comprehend.
Yeah. There's a book called or How Parents Can Talk to Kids and Kids Will Listen. And it tells a little story about this. And it just involves a little girl and her goldfish dies. And so the typical parent response is, we'll just get you a new goldfish.
Yeah,
So but the little girl is like, but I love Goldie and Goldie's now gone, so they don't typically take time to process that. Well, let's I remember this from my own childhood, is like we flushed the fish down the toilet. um, and that might be what parents do now, or they might be a little bit more sensitive, but let's give Goldie maybe a little memorial, or like maybe make a little drawing for her, or just put something up so that you can remember her, and let's cry about her. And when you're ready, we may get you another pet. It could be a goldfish, it could be a kitten, or whatever. But I think, that I think that really might be part of the flavor of this book, is that we really do need to let kids have the time to grieve if they need to, and
yeah, no,
honor their feelings.
yeah. I think the message is everyone needs to grieve, not kids or adults. So we kind of have to respect that and kind of help that along. Sometimes if you never help it along, they never really completely grieve.
Yeah. Well, as you see at the end of this website, and I'll put the website here below in the notes and also in this film, that we just navigate where Max goes. And what we do is we learn lessons about how parents and kids and other kids and kids can communicate about mental health issues through a school year. Is there anything else that you'd like to say about you, your practice, any products, services that you have available? Anything else you'd like to say before we close?
Yeah, I mean, I think my only takeaway message would be, in most education systems, including the U.S., we don't really have any education on mental health. We learn about writing, reading, math, science, history, art, even music, but there's really no education on mental health. I mean, there's even sex ed, but there's nothing on mental health.
And drugs too. They teach us about
Yeah,
drugs.
yeah. So I think, and, like, to be perfectly honest, I mean, I didn't know much about mental health until I went to medical school either, because I mean, no one taught us, and there's no reason to look it up by yourself or talk to your friends about it. It's something that you kind of just deal with on your own. So my call to action would be, for parents to be more proactive rather than reactive. It's good to kind of open up that line of conversation now before it actually happens. And you never know, being proactive might save your child's life, or your one of your child friends' life. Who knows? But again, be more proactive instead of reactive. We're in a society where everything's so fast paced that we end up just being more reactive than proactive, and sometimes we're so behind the ball that too little, too late at sometimes.
Being more proactive than reactive. And I think the books that you have put out can help parents be more aware and proactive, for sure. And I mean, who can lose with those drawings? I cannot get over that you actually did all your artwork too. That is just so, so cool. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on Calming the Chaos, Dr. Dang. I really appreciated having you here and addressing this very important subject because our kids are so fragile right now, and they need to be. We need to hold space for them, I think.
Yeah.
All right. And so take care. And again, thank you for being a guest on Calming the Chaos podcast.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Calming the Chaos podcast. You can find all Calming the Chaos podcasts on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Music, Spotify, Amazon, and on YouTube. You can also go to www.calmingthechaospodcast.com for more information and to see all podcast episodes. Thanks so much for listening, and I look forward to sharing my next podcast episode with you. In the meantime, take care.